All right, returning our focus now to football right here on the SportsMax Zone. And 5 of the 7 matches in match week 22 of the Ray and Nephew Jamaica Premier League were completed on Sunday. And we were treated to surprises, excitement and plenty of goals. But let's first have a look at the scorelines. So what do we have here? All right, just waiting for the results.
Not good for Mount Pleasant.
Yeah.
We should warn the
viewers, yeah, especially if they are Mount Pleasant fans. I own a Mount Pleasant shirt now, thanks to Kylie. All right, so Racing United defeated Chapelton Maroons. That's 2-1. Dunby Holden able to keep that clean sheet. 2-0 against Montego Bay United. Harbour View a 2-1 win against Mount Pleasant. Yeah, Mount Pleasant, as we were talking about. Portmore United 2-1 against Humber Lion. Waterhouse and Malines. That 1-1 draw. And of course, we have these upcoming matches. Now, let's see what the table looks like following those results. Mount Pleasant still on the top of the table, very unbothered, 52 points. Montego Bay United on 44. Arnott Gardens in 3rd position on 42, and Portmore United in 4th on 38. Cavalier and Waterhouse, they round out the top 6. If we look in the relegation zone, you'd see Vere United having played 21 matches on 17 points. 2 points separate them from 12th place Harbour View, and Humber Lion, of course, in 14th position on 14 points. All right, well, our feature game live on SportsMax was the 1-1 draw between Waterhouse and Malines United, with Atafaroy by Graves' 89th minute equaliser, saving the hosts from what would have been a 4th consecutive home defeat. Well, both head coaches spoke after the match and both felt that their team should have left with all 3 points.
Disappointed. Very disappointed. All the way we can't see the goal today. I mean, that's something we're talking about. I mean, we have to take licks for that. It's something we talk about, you know, we can't make it beat. Let us something else spring in the game that we never planned for. But that game was silly. It was silly from us today. And you know, we have to talk about that in the dressing room before we go.
I thought we played well in patches. I thought we had some good moments. I thought we defended when we needed to defend, you know. Can't see that soft one. You know, we should have dealt with it way, way better. I thought we allowed him to cross the ball. You know, we should have gotten a bit tighter with him. And in the 6-yard box, ball traveling at that height, you really want to deal with that. Your goalkeeper really want to deal with that a bit better. But guess what? Football, you know, some tough ones sometimes.
All right, well, with us to review this matchup and so much more, our in-house football analyst, the man who supports Arsenal, Leger Williams. Good afternoon, Lig.
Good afternoon.
Good to see you.
I'm glad you got that out of the way earlier. I won't have to mention it now.
No, I know. I'm smart, you know. I know how to do this thing. So if I say it first, then you don't need to tell me about it. Anyways.
Attack is the best form of defense.
Thank you. So what I do want you to actually talk about is why you're here, and that's the JPL matchup. We heard from both coaches just now. Of course, both of them believing that they should have walked away with 3 points. You watched the match. You analyzed it. Who should have gotten all 3 points based on the type of play that you saw?
I think all in all, a draw is a fair result. Reason being, I think Waterhouse created enough chances to get at least 1 goal out of the game. But their finishing wasn't the best. But I think if we're looking at it from I guess you would say a more logical point of view, after Malines would have taken the lead through Jason Wright, I think they'd feel pretty hard done by. I was watching the game last night, and then I was speaking to the producer during, because both commentators were very sure that Waterhouse's equalizer was no foul in the play. But for me, I think Bygrave most definitely fouled goalkeeper Donai. And I think in that estimation, I do believe that Waterhouse were a bit lucky to get that equalizer. But all in all, on the general balance of play, I would say that a draw is a fair result, but still not a good result for Waterhouse because they're struggling a bit, especially at home.
At any point in the match, did you feel like there was one team in particular that got opportunities and didn't capitalize on it?
Yeah, I would say Waterhouse early in the game, Javane Bryan had quite a few chances and he didn't take them. But I've always maintained, especially over the past couple of seasons, that Waterhouse have an issue in creating enough clear-cut chances, because the only reason why chances like the one that we would have seen from Javane Bryan is highlighted so much is because Waterhouse don't often create high-level chances. This isn't a high-level chance.
Yeah.
And the most important thing, this is a high-level chance, but the most important thing is creating chances like that one consistently, and Waterhouse don't do that. So what that causes is more pressure on their strikers to deliver. And it was the same thing last season when they only scored 38 goals from their 26 games.
Yeah.
31 of those came from their front three of Javane Bryan, Rivaldo Mitchell, and Andre Fletcher, and that's something that's not sustainable. And they've brought over that form, I think, into this season where they're the joint eighth best attack, I guess you can say, in quotes, best attack in the league. And they're not, as I said, it's just all down to their chance creation. And obviously, I have my reasons why I think their chance creation is bad. But if I were to delve into those tactical issues, I fear that we would need the entirety of the show. So
and we don't have that
yeah,
for you.
exactly. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the things I don't like is when you say that, though, Lish, because, you know, it makes us feel like we want to hear. So maybe next time, can you come with a summarized version so we can talk?
I can summarize it in 30 seconds.
Okay.
So Waterhouse, they have a lot of issues when it comes on to building up the play.
Yeah.
They typically build up with their keeper, their two centre-backs, and their number 6, and that's not enough numbers to supplement, especially when a team is pressing them. So for long periods in a game, Waterhouse don't find the ball in the final third, and they're unable to create chances that way.
Yeah.
So in a really short answer to what you were asking, that's why I think Waterhouse have been struggling to create chances.
Yeah, and you know, I want to move on to the bigger match because it's one that everybody was expecting a particular result. That's why we call it an upset. Mount Pleasant being defeated by Harbour View. A lot of people didn't see that one coming, Lish, but Harbour View did exactly what they had to do. They got the goals from Rohan Brown and Okwasa Chung to seal that win for them. Where did Mount Pleasant lose this one?
Yeah, no, that's a very surprising result, as you would have said. Harbour View coming into that game had one win in their last 15 games. Mount Pleasant were on a 12-game winning streak, a record in the Jamaica Premier League. So when I heard that that result was coming through, I had to, you know, call all my contacts, get some highlights, get some footage, because I'm not quite sure how that possibly could have happened. But I do think that Harbour View have been improving steadily over the past couple of weeks, even in defeat. So I believe that they were due a win, but I didn't expect it to come this past weekend against Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant, you know, it's always ironic. These type of runs, long unbeaten runs, usually end in unexpected ways. When you look across European football or international football, Argentina went into the World Cup unbeaten in so many games, and it was Saudi Arabia who would have broken that. I think the only long unbeaten streak I can think of that was broken by a proper rival would probably be maybe Manchester United breaking Arsenal's 49 unbeaten run. So these things always happen. It's always going to be a quote-unquote lesser team, not to call Harbour View a lesser team, a team in bad form that's going to break the run. But I think that Harbour View did well enough. They've recruited well, and Okwasa Chung, I know a goal like that would have been very sweet for them, having just left Mount Pleasant this past summer.
Yeah, and how much impact would the January signings have had, Lige, on Harbour View's upturn? Because they have been better in the past couple of weeks than they had been for several months. And Colorado Murray, who was playing some football in Costa Rica.
Yeah, in Dominican Republic.
And where was he before that? Either Costa Rica or El Salvador.
Yeah, he's traveled all of Latin America, so he will travel.
Well, they got him back, and Timar Lewis as well. How much have they helped to resuscitate Harbour View?
Yeah, I think their attack is much more fluid now. I think, obviously, those players were a part of a title-winning team a few years ago. They have a lot of experience, and more importantly, they have a lot of quality as well. Coincidentally, Trayvon Reed would be he wasn't in the starting lineup yesterday, so even more so I was a bit surprised, even though Okwasa Chung can deputize ably for Trayvon Reed, of course. But I do think that they have helped, especially when it comes on to their attack, because Harbour View looked a little bit lackluster in that department. Their defense wasn't that bad generally throughout the season, but at times they just couldn't create enough chances. And they even made 2 changes in midfield. Yeah. And I think Kong and Trey Bennett came in and they did a fantastic job nullifying what Mount Pleasant wanted to do yesterday. So I think a lot of the result came down to the midfield, and it being just a general off day, as Theodore Whitmore would have mentioned after the game, for his Mount Pleasant team.
Yeah, and obviously Mount Pleasant won't be devastated by the result, disappointed but not devastated, because they still have such a healthy lead in the table. But Montego Bay United, who have been very good all season, had an opportunity to closed the gap on them with their stutter, Mount Pleasant, and they were surprised themselves in their game.
Yeah, Dumbo Holding are another team that have been relegation threatened pretty much for most of the season, and then now they're coming back into form. Harold Thomas back there, he's the coach that led them to a Jamaica Premier League final a couple of seasons ago, left of course to fulfill other duties, and then now he's back and he's having them play much better. By all estimation, they actually had the better of the play against Montego Bay United. Even when Montego Bay United have dropped points this season, typically it's been against the run of play, but by all estimations, by all highlights that I would have seen, Dumbo Holding had the better chances throughout the game, and they were well deserving of a 2-0 win. So I think Harold Thomas has them playing better football. There's a massive squad turnover this January. Dumbo Holding getting rid of a lot of veterans, bringing back players that would have represented them in the past, such as Nicoy Christian, who has made a really big impact, Dean Andre Thomas, who is making a really big impact. They got rid of their club captain, Ricardo Thomas, who is on his way to Arnett Gardens. So that's a huge move as well. So Harold Thomas is refreshing the squad, quote unquote, and he's getting the best out of them now. But for Montego Bay United, this is just another hiccup in the road. I think they'll be perfectly fine, just as Mount Pleasant will be. Those are two teams who I see comfortably making it into the playoffs.
Yeah, comfortably making it into the playoffs indeed. And of course, Arnett Gardens will play later tonight. They have the opportunity to go to second. Of course, that second position, quite vital because it gives you the opportunity, or well, you go straight to the semi-final round of the competition when the playoffs start. But we're a long way away from that. Although I want to talk about Leger Racing United, because they are racing up the table. They are in 7th position now, unbeaten in their last 5 matches, including a draw against Cavalier, and then they've had wins against Tivoli, Vere, Harbour View, and yesterday Chapelton Maroons by 2-1. They are now 6 points away from a playoff position, 28 points, 6 behind Waterhouse, who are on 34. And things are looking up for the new boys.
Yeah, they're gelling really well. They're playing some really good football, as they have been for majority of the season. But I think a lot of it is down to some of their best players finally hitting their best form. We've seen Ronaldo Biggs threaten all season, but now he's coming into his own. From the very first game week, if you would remember, I've been speaking really well about Nikhil Ellis and his form. He has now scored in 3 of the last 4 games, having moved up into more of an attacking midfield slot. Also, it's a real shame, I'll say, that he wasn't selected for the national team that will be taking on Trinidad and Tobago. But I suspect that I'll be previewing those games later on this week, so I'll get into the squad and all of that later. But yeah, Nikhil Ellis in some really good form. But a key player for Racing United has been Markovich Brown. He's their captain at centre back, and he was out for 2 months, and he's come back into this team, and this run that you're talking about, 5 games unbeaten, is synonymous with him coming back. Since he's been back, 5 games, 4 wins, 1 loss, and 3 clean sheets. So he has been a huge part why Racing has been in such good form lately.
Yeah, but it's not just his defensive abilities, is it? It's also his leadership of that unit.
Yeah, because they've had a lot of... They've refreshed their squad a lot in January as well, letting go over 8 players in the January window, bringing in a lot of young players as well. So for his leadership, it's invaluable. I think their midfield two of Reed and Basco have been fantastic as well lately. So yeah, this Racing team is really coming together well, and they're showing some good form. They definitely could threaten getting into that top 6.
Yeah, and of course, next they will play Montego Bay United, but of course the Ray and Nephew Jamaica Premier League will go on, can we call it a short break?
Yeah.
And it will return on the 16th of February. Hopefully the players don't have too much fun on Valentine's Day before they get back to football a couple of days later. But based on how things are shaping up, Leger, and I know we just spoke about Racing, but is there anyone else at this stage who you think could trouble the top 6 as it is now?
I think Tivoli will always be in the mix. I'm not exactly sure if they will get the consistency in their results to trouble that top 6, but they do have the quality, and we all know the caliber of coach at Jerome where it is. So I wouldn't be surprised if they sneak in, especially with the form that Waterhouse have been showing, and they're the team that's really allowing everyone to get close to them in Racing and Tivoli. So I think you'll come down to Waterhouse and their form. Waterhouse tend to end seasons really well, as they did last season, to avoid being dumped out of the top 6. So I think Tivoli and Racing are the closest. I really like Molynes United, but their team is really young, and I don't think that they also will have the consistency to trouble. But Tivoli and Racing obviously have to look out for. So Tivoli against Arnett will be a very important game for all the reasons that you and I would have listed.
And of course, Molynes are 11 points behind Waterhouse at this stage. So a lot of ground for them to make up to realistically think about getting into the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, Lish, a pleasure as always. Thanks for stopping by on our set, and we'll see you in the week again.
Yeah, of course. And of course, remember, even though SportsMax Zone is going on, we have the SportsMax app. And there are 2 big Jamaica Premier League games coming up, starting at 5 and then at 7:45 Jamaica time, obviously add an hour if you're in the rest of the Caribbean or the Eastern Caribbean, because Veer versus Cavalier, big game. We might see a debut of Tyreek McGee for Veer United, and also Arnett versus Tivoli, the Garden Battle. It doesn't get bigger than that. I'll be there.
Is the first one really a big game, given the recent results?
It's a big game for the storylines, and that's why we're in the business.
For McGee. For McGee's potential debut.
Yeah, that's a big game.
And the coaches, the rival coaches.
All right.
Rival coaches. I thought we were over that now.
All right, well, we're going to take a break now. Come right back. We have a lot to discuss on today's show. Break time.